All right. If I could have all the kids age 14 and under come up. Still missing one. Well, we'll have Megan bring her one back. All right, guys, this is called a grogger. You know what a grogger does? It makes noise. So I want you to hold on to that. Yeah, go ahead and try them out. Get it out of your system real quick. Here, take one back to your sister. There you go, boys. Sure did. All right, what kids? I need 3 kids above the age of 14 who want one. Well, Dina wants one. Mona wants one. There you go. All right, you guys can go sit down. All right, enough of the grogging. For now. Let's see.
Sit down till it's time.
Okay, here's the deal. We're going to tell a story. We're going to tell the story of Esther, and every time that you hear the name Haman, you use the groggers, and you go, boo! Haman's the bad guy.
Haman, you do that.
And you stomp your feet.
Stomp your feet. Make as much noise as you can.
Go boo and shake that.
Blot out the name of Haman.
Shake that when you hear the name Haman.
All right? And what else are we supposed to do? Was it something about Mordecai? Cheer? Something? Yay! All right. So Haman's bad. Boo! Mordecai's good. Yeah! All right. This is from the book of Esther. And the first chapter of this story is called Beauty and the Feast. The story begins with a huge banquet or a party that the great king of Persia, Xerxes, or Ahasuerus, celebrated for 7 days. It must have been quite a party. On the 7th day, King Xerxes had a little bit too much to drink. He was quite drunk, and he decided he wanted some entertainment. As you probably already guessed, the king was not a follower of Yahweh, not a follower of God. The king decided that his wife, Queen Vashti, should come to his party and show off how beautiful she was. But King Vashti refused the king's request. The king was very angry and eventually decided to fire Vashti as queen. Can you imagine being queen and getting fired from that job? Nope. That's not good. Yes, Jessica?
I didn't know you can get fired from being a queen.
Well, according to this literature, we can.
That's a good question.
And I applaud you for sticking your hand up and asking a question.
Amen.
Amen.
The most silent one of all decides to ask a question and make a statement. Good point.
Good
She was
point.
married to Henry VIII, who would have chopped her head off.
Vashti had that going for her, yes.
Can I put something in this?
Later, King Xerxes felt quite bad that he had fired such a beautiful queen. The king's advisors came up with an unusual idea. They decided to hold a beauty contest to pick a new queen for King Xerxes. So a search was made in all the provinces of the king for young women for the contest. All of the women chosen were given special beauty treatments and special foods and lived at a royal palace. Esther, her Hebrew name was Hadassah, a beautiful young Jewish woman, was chosen to be part of this special program. Esther's mom and dad were dead, but her uncle Mordecai had raised her and been a father to her. Mordecai warned Esther not to tell anyone that she was a Jew. Esther obeyed Mordecai and kept kept a secret. This is good stuff, right? The next chapter is called Good Times, Good Times. King Xerxes loved Esther more than any of the women his advisors had found in their beauty search. He gave Esther 7 personal servants and the best of everything he had. The king crowned Esther queen and declared a special holiday in her honor. King Xerxes even gave away expensive gifts to celebrate this special day in Esther's honor. Esther's uncle Mordecai.
Yay!
Really? Is that the best you can do? Because see, that wasn't nearly as good as the times before when you done it. Esther's uncle Mordecai. Yay! That's what I'm talking about. Must have been very happy for his adopted daughter. Mordecai. Yay! Worked for the king's government and followed all the exciting events of Esther's success like any proud daddy would. One day Mordecai was sitting at the gate of the king's palace, and he heard 2 men talking. They were making a secret plot to kill King Xerxes. Mordecai ran and told Esther the news, and Esther told the king. The plot to kill the king was ruined by Mordecai's report. And the 2 men were hung as traitors. Mordecai looked pretty good. Yay! I'm sorry. Things looked pretty good. Way to pay attention, though. For Esther and Mordecai. Yay! But trouble was just around the corner. Next chapter is called Bad Attitude. Trouble was Haman's middle name. Haman worked for King Xerxes, and Haman was an evil man.
Yes, he was.
Yes, he was. Haman was in love with himself.
Yes, he was.
And he demanded that everyone kneel down when he came in the room.
Yeah.
Everyone was afraid of evil Haman. Except for Mordecai.
Yay!
Mordecai
Yay!
feared and worshiped God alone and did not bow down to Haman like everyone else. This made Haman very angry. He hated Mordecai.
Yay!
When he found out that Mordecai was a Jew, he decided to kill Mordecai and every Jewish person in the kingdom when he got a chance. Evil Haman made a plan. Evil people make plans, don't they? Yes, they do. Haman. Really? Told the king that there was a group of people in his kingdom that were troublemakers. And they broke the king's laws. Let me stop right there and interject an adult portion. They didn't obey Xerxes' laws because they obeyed God's laws.
Amen.
They weren't out doing their own thing.
Yeah.
They were following the commandments. All right, back to the kids' part. Not only was this a lie, but Haman never told the king who these people were. Haman convinced the king to issue a decree so that these troublemakers could be killed. Haman could not wait to get his revenge on Mordecai and the Jewish people. See, I told you it was a time of celebration. Everyone's having a good time. There's laughing going on, and I don't know why. I can only assume it's for something I did.
We're cheering the bad things that are happening.
Yay, no.
Okay. And since you've read the end of the book, I will allow that to happen. Another adult part here. Haman Haman represents Hasatan. He is the accuser of the brethren. All right? We need to understand that. That's why we want to blot out his name. He is the accuser. Now, when the accuser hatches an evil plan, the main purpose of that evil plan is always, always, always the destruction of God's people.
Yes.
Bear that in mind. This chapter is called, Are You Talking to Me? Are you talking to me? When Esther's uncle Mordecai heard the horrible news of Haman's plan, he quickly went to Esther and said, Perhaps you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Regina, perhaps you have come to one word assembly for such a time as this. Esther was the Jewish people's only hope, as the Jewish people were a small group in Xerxes' kingdom compared to the Persians. Esther told Mordecai to fast. Not run fast, but to fast, to go without food. It's not an easy thing to do. And pray for 3 days before she went to speak to King Xerxes about the terrible plan of Haman. King Xerxes, like many kings of that time, was incredibly powerful, and no one could speak to the king without a special invitation. If you were not invited and interrupted the king, you could be put to death.
Yeah.
But if the king pointed his royal scepter towards you, that meant your life was spared. Interrupting the king was a very risky thing to do. The plot thickens. After 3 days of fasting and praying, Esther went to the king. King Xerxes was not mad, but happy to see Esther, and he pointed his gold scepter at Esther. Esther must have been very brave. The king promised Esther he would give her whatever she wanted. To the king's surprise, Esther only asked the king to come to a special banquet for him and Haman. Delayed reaction, but a good reaction just the same. The king and Haman immediately came to her special dinner, as Esther had asked. King Xerxes was dying to know what Esther wanted. But when he asked her, she only asked that the king and Haman come to a banquet again the next night. Haman, who was already in love with himself, left the banquet with an even bigger head than usual. Interesting, isn't it? That he was so puffed up and proud that, going to one dinner was okay, but getting invited to a second one made his head swell, made him feel more important than he actually was. On the way home, he came across Mordecai.
Yay!
And became more angry than ever that Mordecai
Yay!
would bow to such an important person as himself. Haman. Try again. Haman. Thank you. Went home and boasted about his special invitation from Esther, and was furious that Mordecai did not bow down to him. His family suggested that he build a 75-foot high gallows to hang Mordecai, on which Haman... Well, we're getting sluggish now. Let's read that sentence over again. His family suggested that he build a 75-foot high gallows to hang Mordecai on, which Haman immediately had built. Just when Haman thought everything was going his way, it was all about to go wrong.
Yeah.
Interesting. This chapter is called Bedtime Stories.
This is the Bible.
Yeah, it doesn't have chapters like Bedtime Stories or the plot thickens, but it's in there. It's got a bunch of frilly Elizabethan language that goes with it. This is a simpler version. That night, King Xerxes could not sleep. Just like kids like bedtime stories, King Xerxes liked to be read the royal records when he could not sleep. Maybe history made him sleepy. Or one of Kelly's lessons. See, that's what you people don't realize is I'm up here, I see things. I see when the eyelids get heavy and when we begin to nod off. But try not to look like we're nodding off. This night, the king learned some very important information. The records were read about an attempted plot to kill him that was discovered by a certain man named Mordecai.
Yay!
The king asked what had been done to reward this great act that saved his life. The record said that Mordecai had not received anything for saving the king's life. That morning, Haman arrived early to ask the king for permission to hang Mordecai.
I don't want to hang him.
Well, we're not cheering the act, we're cheering the name.
Yeah.
Every sentence you say, it's like something bad about Mordecai, and then we're like, yay!
But we're cheering the name, we're not cheering the act. Let's try it again. That morning, Haman. A spirit of confusion has entered into this place. Spirit of confusion, I rebuke you in the name of Yeshua Messiah. Let's try that a third time. Third time's a charm. That morning, Haman arrived early to ask the king for permission to hang Mordecai. I know it sounds bad, but we're cheering the name. The king greeted Haman with a question. The king did not know that Haman wanted to kill Mordecai. He asked Haman, what should be done for the man that the king delights to honor? Haman, of course, had no idea the king was talking about Mordecai. Who Haman wanted to hang. Haman, being in love with himself, figured the king must be wanting to honor him. So Haman thought of every good thing he could think of to honor himself. Haman said, I think the king should give this man his royal robe and the king's royal horse, and one of the king's noblest princes should lead this man through the street saying, this is what is done for the man who the king delights to honor.
Yay!
The king replied to Haman's total shock that he should immediately do this for Mordecai.
Yay!
See, cheering, fits name, fits context there, doesn't it? Who saved the king's life? Haman spent most of the day leading the king's finest horse through the streets with Mordecai on the horse's back, while Haman declared, this is what is done for the man whom the king delights to honor.
Cheerio, Jack.
Look, How many times have we watched biblical movies yet they would have English accents? It happens. Charlton Heston can somehow magically muster up this British accent when he plays part of Moses. Critics, every one. The name of this chapter is Haman hangs out. It was a tough day for Haman, as you can imagine, but it was going to get worse. Not long after Haman's returned home, still in shock, the king called him to the second banquet with Esther. Once again, the king could not wait to ask Esther what she wanted. Esther blurted out that someone was going to kill her and her people, and she begged the king to save them. The king asked angrily, "Who is going to do such a thing?" Esther replied, "This evil man, Haman." The king became so angry, he left the room. Haman was stunned and terrified. He did not know that Esther was related to Mordecai. And a Jew. Haman fell on Esther's couch and began begging for his life. King Xerxes came into the room and exploded when he saw Haman lying beside his beautiful queen. The king flew into a violent rage and accused Haman of trying to steal his wife. Haman's evil plans had turned against him, and he was taken and hung on the gallows that he had built for Mordecai. This chapter is called Happy Ending. Who loves a happy ending? We know that it's a happy ending. Therefore, it's okay to cheer for Mordecai even though he's being led to the gallows. There is more to this story, but we're going to skip the ending. In the end, not only did Haman get hung Not only did Haman get hung on his own gallows, but all the enemies of the Jewish people suffered a great defeat. King Xerxes made a law that allowed the Jewish people to defend themselves, and they did. Esther remained the king's queen, and her uncle Mordecai became a powerful man in King Xerxes' palace. Jewish people have been celebrating this great victory ever since. The story of Esther and Purim teaches us that when things look bad, Yahweh is in control.
Hallelujah.
And He will take care of godly men and women and boys and girls who refuse to bow to evil.
Yes. Amen.
The end. Of the kids portion. You didn't think I was just going to stop there, did you?